everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to take a look at NXT TakeOver Toronto 2019. This was a show that for quite a lot of it I think felt like it was a difficult one to figure out. Basically, a lot of the matches were really good, but some of them felt maybe not quite up to the level of recent TakeOver matches that we've come to know and love and been spoiled by over the past couple of years. But then the main event happened, and that was just something else. So without any further ado, let's take a look at what happened at NXT TakeOver Toronto 2019. In fact, I say that some of the matches weren't quite up to the standard that we're used to, but which again is a very, very high standard. But we did start off with a hot opener. NXT TakeOver shows often like to start with these fast-paced tag team matches to get everybody all ready for the show ahead. And that's exactly what we had here. The Street Profits defending their NXT tag team titles against the Undisputed Era, represented by Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Yeah, the crowd are really up for this one, helped not only by the fact that we were in a big popular wrestling town in Toronto, but also the fact that the Street Profits came along and got in the crowd a bit during their entrance, as they often like to do, which is always lovely to see. They're just such excitable young men. It started off maybe a bit slower than we're used to from some of these TakeOver tag team matches, but down the stretch things really picked up and got to the sort of level that we've come to expect from the NXT tag team division. There were a lot of cool exchanges of strikes, submission holds, nice little instances of double team action as well. And like Angelo Dawkins just pouncing everybody out of the way left, right and centre, chucking his smaller opponents around. And by the time this match actually finished, I think it had developed into a really entertaining contest. Montez Ford at one point also decided to do the People's Elbow, which was sadly cut off, which got major heat from the crowd because how dare you deny us the most electrifying move in all of sports entertainment. But he did then hit a rock bottom for only a 2 count. Somewhere in Hollywood, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is absolutely fuming that his finisher has been buried like that. I'm only joking. It was a really cool moment and a really nice thing for Montez to do, and obviously it got the crowd fully on board with the Street Profits. The finish came when Dawkins was able to hit his spear on not only one but both members of the Undisputed Era, and that led to Montez Ford hitting one of his outrageous high elevation frog splashes to pick up the victory, and the Street Profits retained the tag team titles. After this match we got one of those nice crowd shots where it shows someone in attendance of note, and the first one of the night was Ricochet, which was nice to see, but we got one or two little bit more exciting ones a little bit later on. I feel like I've really dumbed down Ricochet's appearance there. He looked like he was having a lovely time. Next up, a singles match which was billed as kind of a grudge match between Io Shirai, who was of course recently turned heel, and her opponent Candice LeRae. Despite being the babyface, Candice actually charged Io before the bell and just started attacking her straight away, which really helped sell just how intense this rivalry's been. Also, I thought this match was going to be a lot more one-sided than it actually turned out to be. I wondered if NXT were maybe going to just book Io to win in relatively quick and decisive fashion, but instead we got much more of a 50-50 contest, and in hindsight, as much as I would have enjoyed a dominant Io Shirai display, I think this probably led to a better match. And again, this was probably one of the better matches on the card. Again, I feel really harsh saying that some of these matches weren't up to the standard that we're used to, and that's not because they weren't good at all, it's just because TakeOver has set such a phenomenally high bar for itself. And I do just want to re-emphasize that this was a very enjoyable show nonetheless. Another big thing that was evident in this match for anyone who's not too familiar with Io Shirai's work is just what a phenomenal talent she is. I think pound for pound, as just like a pure worker, I think she's one of the best wrestlers on the entire WWE roster, and that was evident at various stages of this match, not just in her execution of various moves, which she hit like flawlessly in quite a lot of points during the match, but also her facial expressions, her heelish mannerisms, and just her general sense of pacing as well. She really is an absolute elite level, world-class wrestling talent. At one point, I really did bite on a near fall as Candice was able to hit Miss LeRae's Wild Ride, her swinging neck breaker from the second rope, but Io was able to kick out of that, and from then on it was like kind of a foregone conclusion that Io was going to win. And I think this was probably the most easily predictable match of any heading into this show, but they did a good job of still, giving us at least one pinfall or near fall that was kind of easy to bite on. But after that, Io was able to take control. She hit her moonsault, but then Candice kicked out, and from that moment on, Io Shirai just snapped, beat Candice down physically with slaps and just punches, and then Candice was just on the deck, and Io clamped on a new finisher, a new submission move that I don't think we've seen her use before. I think commentary were calling it as a Koji clutch. It was kind of like a Zack Sabre Jr. style submission with various different limbs involved and also a chokehold as well, and that actually caused Candice to pass out. I think it was a good call to have her pass out rather than submit. It helped keep her relatively strong, and I think that her performance in this match was a good one, but again, this was all about Io Shirai, as it should have been given her recent heel turn. Next up, it was supposed to be time for the North American title triple threat match, but instead Matt Riddle came out of the crowd and into the ring and called out Killian Dain, who's been attacking him and calling him out on recent episodes of NXT. The former Sanity member did answer that challenge, and the pair had a nice brawl all the way up the ramp to the stage area. Various referees came out to try and break it up, but they were just too intense and too wild. So then all dressed in black security guards came out, and they did an even worse job of trying to break it up. Matt Riddle at one point snapped and just started hitting his signature moves on various members of the security team, who I think it's pretty fair to say were wrestlers because of the way they were taking the moves, and also because a lot of them were pretty hefty wrestler looking guys. The finish of the brawl came when Killian Dain ran and knocked not only himself and Matt Riddle, but also just one of the security guys who got in the way. All three of them tumbled off the stage through a table, and Killian Dain kind of won the brawl, but a lot of damage was done. It was a very exciting end to the segment, and a great segment to see, because often takeovers are just match after match after match, and even though those matches are more often than not excellent ones, it's nice to see a bit of an angle play out as well. I, for one, cannot wait for the inevitable match this sets up. That's right, Matt Riddle versus Killian Dain versus that random security guy in a triple threat match, and my money is on the security man. I think he's going to pick up a huge victory and head on into the NXT Championship title picture. The next special guest we were shown in the crowd was none other than the current Evolve champion, Austin Theory, who I think, out of anybody not currently signed to NXT, is the most likely candidate, the most surefire bet to be a future NXT champion. He is tailor-made to be a WWE superstar. He's very young. I think he's only about 21 or 22 years old. He looks incredible. He's really built and just seems every inch a WWE superstar. So barring any sort of career downturn or injury or anything, I think pretty much the path is set for him to become a big deal in NXT, if not the main roster. Next up, we did get that North American title match as planned, the Velveteen Dream defending against both Pete Dunne and Roderick Strong, who of course used to be tag partners for a brief while before Roddy turned on Pete Dunne to join the Undisputed era. Now we have to talk, of course, first of all, about the Velveteen Dream's entrance, as we so often do at TakeOver. This one started off with the Mounties theme music, which I never ever thought I'd be saying in 2019, but there you go. And then various people came out dressed as Mounties, but they unveiled themselves to be the Toronto Raptors cheerleading squad. And with the Raptors winning the NBA title a few months ago, that went down very, very well indeed with the home crowd. Then Dream came out dressed as the Mountie, or a Mountie, but I like to think he was dressed as the Mountie, made his entrance, and sadly, Pete Dunne and Roderick Strong did not make entrances with the same level of bells and whistles, but I guess that fits their characters a bit more. It's always nice to see Velveteen Dream's entrances at TakeOver. He is so entertaining without even trying sometimes, it seems, but when he does try and goes all out like this, it's even more spectacular. With this being a triple threat match, there were a lot of interesting mini alliances going on. Sometimes, Pete Dunne and Velveteen Dream teaming up against the heel of the match, Roderick Strong, but sometimes, for example, Velveteen Dream and Roderick Strong teaming up, not because it was a formal alliance or any sort of teasers of a heel or babyface turn for either man, more just because they were all desperate to win, and that's just what the situation of the match called for at the time, and everyone was a little bit opportunistic, and it was pretty cool and interesting to see. There were some really unique submission spots in this match too. At one point, Dream locked in the sharpshooter. I think it was on Roderick Strong, and obviously with that move being Bret Hart's signature move, the Canadian crowd popped huge for it. At one point, Roderick Strong got his kind of Lion Tamer-y, Walls of Jericho-y, Boston Crab type move, the Stronghold, on both men, which looked really, really difficult, but he actually managed to do it, and both men teased submitting at various points during the submission hold, but they got out of it. But that was a really cool and inventive spot as well. Another notable moment was when Roderick Strong was trapped almost in a makeshift tree of woe in the corner. Pete Dunne had him in an armbar, dangling down from the corner, and Velveteen Dream scaled the opposite corner and hit the purple Rainmaker elbow across the ring, getting just insane distance and displaying his amazing athleticism once again. Dunne at one point was able to hit the bitter end on his former tag team partner, but then Velveteen Dream quite heelishly grabbed the referee's arm on the count of 3, but I enjoyed that spot. He is a babyface, but we all know the Dream's got heelish tendencies because he obviously started off as a heel. He grabbed the referee's arm, and the referee didn't know what to do because there's no DQs in a triple threat match, and it really helped sell the desperation of Velveteen Dream to cling on to that North American Championship in any way that he could. Dream at one point actually looked like he was going to be completely out of the finish of the match when Pete Dunne hit him with a curb stomp. Not like a Seth Rollins style curb stomp, more like a super indie curb stomp, like a PWG Super Dragon style one, where he had both arms and put his foot on the back of his head. It was really brutal, but it fit Pete Dunne's brutal character to a T. A little bit later on though, a very weakened Velveteen Dream was able to get back into the match, and there was a really good false finish here when Dream hit the the Dream Valley driver on Pete Dunne. Roderick Strong then threw Velveteen Dream aside, and it looked like Strong was going to win the title, but instead it was actually the other way around. It was kind of a bait and switch, because then Strong was able to hit his finisher on Pete Dunne. Dream came along, threw Roderick Strong out the way, and was able to pick up the victory and retain the North American Championship. Next up, a match that a lot of people in our live stream chat actually really didn't enjoy, and one of the reasons I've been saying that some of the undercard on this show didn't quite live up to the level that we expect from a takeover. But then again, in the context of a takeover where each and every match is pretty good to excellent, it's hard to work out just how weak this match was. If this had happened on like a Raw or a SmackDown, would we be looking at it in a totally different light? Anyway, this was the NXT Women's Championship match with Shayna Baszler defending against Mia Yim. The story of this match is that Mia Yim's coming into it as like a total badass babyface. She made a special entrance surrounded by various people in bandanas and looking all menacing and that sort of thing. She has been taking out the other members of the Horsewomen backstage in the build-up to this on various episodes of NXT, and they didn't make an appearance, which was really good. That played into the whole story of the feud. Mia's whole character change also played into the story of this match in general, with her dipping into occasional ruthless heelish tactics to really get one over on Shayna Baszler, which commentary were quick to highlight at every given opportunity. Unfortunately, there were one or two moments of apparent miscommunication. It certainly wasn't the smoothest match we've ever seen, and that really didn't help the crowd get into it too. It's worth noting that this match suffered because the crowd were kind of burnt out by this stage, although they did come alive once again for the main event. The ending of the match came after an exchange of submissions where Shayna was able to lock in the Kirifuda clutch, and after struggling for a little bit, Mia Yim was forced to tap out. She couldn't escape, and Shayna retained the NXT Women's Championship. I think given the way this match turned out and the arguable, I guess slightly disappointing nature of it, I think that it was probably the right call to keep the belt on Shayna for now. I think had Mia Yim won the title here, it would have been an underwhelming title change, and that wouldn't have helped either Shayna or Mia Yim going forwards. That's not me writing off Yim as a viable future contender again, like somewhere down the line, but I just think in this moment it was probably the right call to not have a title change. Before the main event, we had our last special guests of the night shown in the crowd, Volta and Tyler Bate as well. Not in the same place, that would be really silly, because obviously they are opponents for NXT TakeOver Cardiff with the WWE UK Championship on the line. So yes, finally we got to the main event after a pretty, damn good show, maybe not one on the level of the best takeovers in recent memory, but certainly a good show and an exciting one. We then got the main event, which was the level of some of the best takeover main events we've ever seen. This was an incredible match. We knew it would be, given the chemistry that Cole and Gargano have, but this was just like, I don't know if it was the best match they've had, but it was certainly the most different and arguably the most entertaining one in a strange way. Yes, of course, this was Adam Cole, the NXT champion, defending against Johnny Gargano in a 2 out of 3 falls match. The first fall being a normal singles match as chosen by Cole, the second fall being a street fight as chosen by Gargano, and if it were to go to a third fall, that was a secret fall, or a secret stipulation rather, decided by William Regal. I wonder if they would go to the third fall. Of course they went to the third fall. Also, Gargano came out in Wolverine-themed attire for those keeping track of his superhero antics over every TakeOver appearance. The chat in our stream reliably informed me that Wolverine is a Canadian superhero, so that makes a lot of sense. The first fall, the singles match, reminded me of the old Randy Orton versus Christian feud, but like sped up, like a fast-forward, modernized version of that, with both men just hyper-aware of each other's movesets because they've clashed so many times over the past few months. They were like avoiding the setups to each other's big signature moves. They were going for each other's finishers and avoiding them as well. It was a really interesting and really well done opening portion to this match, which was a long match, by the way, all in all. I think it went about 45 minutes or so. Gargano spent a lot of this first fall working the leg of Adam Cole, and Cole sold it really, really well. At one point, Cole went for his Ushigoroshi, but just hit a normal Michinoku driver instead, because I guess he didn't want to drop Gargano onto his own bad leg, which is really, really good psychology, and exactly what you want to see if you're a smarky bastard like me. At one point, Cole seemed to get too frustrated and went to get a chair from ringside, and everyone was like, well, if you get DQ'd, then you're one fall down, what are you doing? But it was all distraction as the referee tried to remove the chair, and once the ref's back was turned, Cole just just booted Johnny right in the balls, but it only got a 2 count. It did, however, succeed in enraging Johnny, who super kicked Cole's face off and then just attacked him with the chair, obviously leading to the ref calling for the bell and awarding the first fall to Adam Cole. You might be thinking, what a stupid booking decision, that's made Johnny look really weird. Not really weird, really stupid, but it wasn't in a weird way. It was actually quite clever because it told the story of Gargano just not being able to wait anymore, not wanting to go through this singles match, just wanting to get to the next fall, the street fight, so he could really punish Adam Cole. And that was made very clear because the moment that the first fall ended, Gargano just got the chair and started laying into Cole again and again. The street fight began and they spilled into the crowd with Gargano really firing everyone up. And it's worth noting that at the start of this match, as with the last match when Cole took the title from Gargano, the crowd were more in Adam Cole's favour, I guess. They wanted him to win the match more. But by this point of the match, they came alive for Gargano's big fiery babyface comeback, which I think just goes to show what an effective wrestler and what an effective babyface specifically Johnny Gargano is. They eventually came back to ringside, breaking the crowd barrier on the way, and then Cole got backdropped from the English announce table through the Spanish announce table by Gargano, and thankfully the table did break. Gargano then got 2 tables out from under the ring and rolled them into the ring, but didn't get a chance to use them before the end of this fall. Cole regained control, wedged a chair like in the corner of the ring, and was about to throw Gargano into them, but Gargano regained control of the match and just lawn darted Cole right into the chair in that turnbuckle, like wedged in between the 2 turnbuckles, and then was able to lock in the Gargano escape, and Cole tapped out, leveling things up at 1 fall apiece. And we all looked to the entranceway and wondered if Tommaso Ciampa was going to... No, that's not what happened. The steel cage lowered down, revealing that the final fall wasn't a standard steel cage match. It was a cage with weapons hung all around the outside on the walls, barbed wire on the top to prevent any sort of escape, and basically what I can most feasibly compare it to, I guess, is the Ambrose Asylum, but this was done way better than the old Ambrose Asylum match itself. Just noticed there, I've called it on my notes, William Regal's Super Cage of Death, which sounds like the title of either a PWG or a Progress show, and if it's not in the near future, I'm going to be really sad. There were some really cool weapons-based spots in this fall, such as both guys just grabbing a kendo stick each and just laying into each other again and again, like a hockey fight, but if they kept the hockey sticks in their hands, I guess. Gargano also at one point managed to suspend himself from a ladder laying diagonally across the corner of one of the top corners of the cage, if that makes sense. He hung from 2 of the rungs and swung himself into a nice Hurricane Rana onto Cole in the ring. That was a really cool and inventive spot. Yeah, they really did a good job of utilizing various weapons and pacing it well too, so it didn't feel rushed, but it also didn't feel too labored, which for such a long match was a really good achievement. There was also a fire extinguisher spot. Yes, the spirit of Steve Blackman actually lives on in 2019, with Johnny Gargano spraying a fire extinguisher into Cole's face, and oh man, that may have been my favorite moment of the night. Just the return of a fire extinguisher spot to wrestling in 2019. I couldn't have asked for anything more. We then got a portion of the match which Johnny Gargano is sometimes criticised for, the fact that he is able to take his opponent's best moves and kick out of so many. He is often booked like a superhero, which I guess is quite apt, but it does frustrate a good section of the fans along the way. He kicked out of not only Cole's standard Panama Sunrise, but also a super one where Cole went halfway up the side of a ladder, jumped off into a Panama Sunrise, but again, Gargano was able to kick out of 2. Gargano then busted out, I guess, a super weapons assisted version of his finisher as well, locking in a kendo stick assisted Gargano escape on around Cole's mouth, but Cole was able to bite Gargano's hand to get out of it, and it really showed the desperation of both guys to really stay in this match and keep fighting for the title. At one stage, Gargano retrieved a sledgehammer from the top and channeled his dad, Triple H, just jamming it right into Adam Cole's ribs, which Cole sold perfectly. They said on commentary that he may have cracked a rib or he may have been caught in the liver, and he was wheezing and gasping, and that was really good to see. With Cole down, Gargano then went for a sack hanging from the side of one of the cage walls, which we all assumed would probably be filled with thumbtacks, but it wasn't. It had an assortment of things in. Quite a few sets of brass knuckles, of course, because William Regal put this match together, but also a set of wire cutters. Gargano used this, he climbed up one side of the cage and cut away a section of the barbed wire and just looked to do something devilish with it, I guess, to Adam Cole. But the NXT champion was able to escape, climbing up the side of the cage onto a platform or like laying diagonally across one of the corners of the cage. Gargano joined him, and it became very apparent that the ending of the match was right upon us. Gargano went to jam, I guess, the barbed wire into Cole's face, but Cole, in an act of desperation, just rose up and threw both of them off the platform. They aimed for 2 tables in the ring. They only went through 1. Thankfully, they did hit it. They didn't just land straight on the canvas, but it was still a heavy and dangerous fall. A really dramatic high spot. Hopefully both guys are okay, but my God, was it an effective ending to the match. As they both crashed through the table onto the canvas, Cole, kind of half by luck and half by design, was able to flop over and drape an arm over Johnny Gargano, gaining the successful pinfall and winning the match 2 falls to 1. And Adam Cole is still your NXT champion. Now, as I said, for much of this show, I was not disappointed, that's the wrong word, and not even underwhelmed, but I just felt as though, compared to, as I've said, various other recent takeovers, this wasn't quite on the same level. And then that main event happened and pretty much dragged the show into that upper echelon of takeovers. It was a wonderful main event if it's your cup of tea. If it's not, I still think you'll enjoy it, because there was just so many different elements of this match and so many different stipulations and spots that made it really enjoyable for various different types of wrestling fans. It was really good, probably a match of the year contender, I guess. In fact, yeah, of course it was. And the cap of another successful NXT takeover. So thanks everyone for watching this video, and thank you to everyone who joined myself and Adam Pacitti for our takeover live stream. Tomorrow it won't be a live stream, but Ross and Tom will go head to head for the Cultaholic Heavyweight Championship for SummerSlam predictions. That video should go out like in the day or 2 following the event itself, so you won't have to wait too long. Also on Monday morning, starting about 7 AM British time, I think, myself and Sam will be reacting live on stream to the final of the G1 Climax over in New Japan, so that'll be very exciting too. Loads of content coming your way, but yes, that was what happened at NXT TakeOver Toronto 2019. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.